letting me invite myself to this workshop. And first of all, thank you for hiring me to this great school. Alright, so today I'd like to talk about some very elementary questions that one can ask about given class of groups. When do they embed each other? So, the class of groups that I'd like to talk about today is the class of writing darting groups. So, just to recall, writing darting groups are groups defined by graphs. So, more precisely, if you have a graph, gamma, one can define a group or group presentation where the vertices are the generators, and for each edge we declare that the endpoints of that edge commute. So there are commuting relations and vertices are the generators. So previously known as partially commutative groups or semi-free groups or graph groups, or more affectionately called RAGs, acronym for writing darting groups, they satisfy certain nice group theoretical properties. So to describe them, first of all, an induced subgraph or full subgraph means it is the largest possible subgraph determined by its vertices. Or in other words, full subgraph. So given a subset of the vertex set, you just collect all the edges that are appearing in the larger graph. And elementary facts include that writing darting groups are linear. Actually, writing darting groups are subgroups of more familiar object called Coxer groups. And if you have induced subgraph that will generate subgroup relations between writing darting groups. And also, if you have, two writing darting groups are isomorphic if and only if two graphs are isomorphic as graphs. So, in some sense, studying writing darting groups are equivalent to studying finite graphs. Recently, writing darting groups, many topologists are interested in writing darting groups, partially because if you can embed even closed hyperbolic three-manifold, for example, a spherical three-manifold, embed three-manifold groups into writing darting groups, then one can say a lot about the structure of that group, namely virtually fiber. That means it has a finite cover, which is the mapping torus of a closed surface. So that almost completely characterizes the geometric structure of M. So it is a very important question, which groups can embed into writing darting groups, and more elementarily, so which writing darting groups are embedded into each other? Given finite graphs lambda and gamma, can you embed a lambda into a gamma? Can you decide that? And so forth. So, apparently writing darting groups look quite innocent in the sense that basically it is completely defined by graphs. And given a graph, you can completely describe their presentations. But as you can see in geometric group theory, presentations are, in some sense, almost never helpful to my experience. Or in other words, it can be very deceiving. Even finite presentations, it's very hard to expect what kind of structures, what kind of subgroups it can contain. So, in the case of writing darting groups, there's one previous result is that if you have two graphs and consider their opposite graphs or complement graphs, same thing, and if the second complement graph of the second graph contracts, that contraction is really topological contraction, like just contract edges, and if you see any loops by the contraction process, just disregard the loops. So if opposite graph of the second graph contracts onto the opposite graph of the first graph, then there is an embedding relation from the writing darting group of the first graph into the writing darting group of the second graph. Let's see an example, it will be more transparently though. So for example, if you have a n cycle and n plus 1 cycle, the n plus 1 cycle contracts onto n cycle by just contracting one edge. Therefore, by this theorem, opposite graph writing darting group on the opposite graph n cycle will embed into writing darting group on the opposite graph of n plus 1 cycle. What does it mean? It means if you have, say, opposite graph of 6 cycle that is also known as triangular prism graph, and consider opposite graph for 5 cycle. Actually, this is self-dual, so opposite graph for 5 cycle is 5 cycle again. Then by this theorem, there is an embedding from the first Artin group into the second Artin group. And the map, actually, let me just concretely describe the map. The map is if you have a pentagon and a triangular prism graph. What you do is take a copy of the first P4 path of 4 vertices in the second Artin group. In other words, if you label the vertices A, B, C, D, and we're going to describe the map phi, which we hope to be injective. Then we're going to send A vertex here, B vertex here, C vertex here, D vertex here. And let's call the other vertices say U and V. Then phi will map U to V. And we can show purely by just Van-Canton diagram that this is an injective map. Therefore, 5 cycle embeds in 2 triangle prism graphs. So what is the significance of this observation? Well, this observation has meaning if one considers hyperbolic surface of Artin groups. So about 20 years ago, observations showed that if you have n cycle where n is always 5, then it will contain a hyperbolic surface group by very concrete construction in the K-pi of Artin group. So, and then for about 1 or 2 decades, people wanted to know whether there are any other examples of hyperbolic surface subgroups in the Artin groups other than those are coming from n cycle, where n is always 5. And actually, not answering the question, Chris showed that as long as a closed hyperbolic surface is not characteristic -1, one can embed that hyperbolic surface fundamental group into some Artin group. But in their example also, all those gammas contained 5 n cycle for n is 5. And this triangle prism graph was the first example that while the graph doesn't contain a n cycle for n is 5, it contains a surface group because this 5 cycle is known to contain hyperbolic surface group I number 1 and it embeds into triangular prism graph. And actually, independently, Chris studied the mark and then he gave a proof that some hyperbolic surface group embedded into Artin group with the complement graph of 6 cycle. So this is one. Well, so we start from the first obvious embeddings within Artin group starts from just graph theory. If you have a induced subgraph and Artin group embeds into A gamma. This is observation number 0. And observation number 1 is right there. If you have a complement contraction, then Artin group embeds into A1. So what else? Actually, this observation number 2 is even more classical. So I saw this from Leadership Commenter Group Theory book, which is a basic exercise of H&M extension. If you have 2 groups, H embedded into G, and consider a second copy, say G prime, and let's say H prime is the copy of H, then one can consider free product with amalgamation along H and H prime, and it will embed into H and H extension of G, amalgamated along H. H and extension was defined in Mark's class yesterday. So using this, so Chris previously observed that if you consider, given a graph gamma, consider the double of the given graph gamma along the link of vertex. I will explain what that means. Then there's an embedding from new graph into old graph. So in the case of, say, let's consider this, say, 5 cycle. Consider just, let's say, gamma prime. Let's say, right, let's say gamma is this 5 cycle. Now what we're going to consider is this Artin group as the H&M extension of the group subgroup generi A, B, C, D, and attach stable generator T amalgamated along A and D. Now that corollary means that double along the link of T. Link of T consists of A and D. So double the graph along A and D and forget T. That's precisely what Lindy should do in that exercise of an HME extension. So double along the link of a vertex. So we get this hexagon and forget the stable generator T. Then we have an embedding. Actually, one can describe the embedding concretely. And it is, well, so we send B prime to B conjugate by T, C prime to C conjugate by T. Then actually one can also quotient this second group by any power of T. It is okay even if T has torsion. We still have an embedding. So this is observation number 2, double along the link. So again, it is not graphical embedding in the sense that this hexagon is not appearing in the life cycle. So we have in some sense unexpected embeddings between right and Artin groups. And I'd like to talk about third observation. And to do that, we need a brief, we need mapping class theory. Mapping class group theory. That is, so given a closed surface, closed orientable surface sigma, one can define its mapping class groups. That is mapping class group that is basically quotient of the orientation preserving homomorphism on the surface quotient by any homomorphisms that are isotopic to identity. So basically we are considering surface automorphisms. Surface automorphism, and we're going to declare that any automorphism that are isotopic to identity will be trivial. Just declare that. For example, when we consider band twist along an essential simple loop on a surface. So if you have a surface, actually we will right, and if you consider essential simple loop alpha, what one can consider is we're gonna cut along alpha, cut sigma along the alpha, and we do 2 pi rotation and glue them back. That is another. It is a very simple arbitrary way of making a surface automorphism. And we see the result by, actually I should mention this at the beginning of the talk. So all this work is joint work with Thomas Kobolda, who is at Harvard. And he proved that if you have a pairwise isotopic essential simple loop on a closed surface, let's say alpha through alpha n, and let's consider the band twist generated by them. Well, usually it can be very complicated group, subgroup mapping class group. But his theory was that if you raise them to sufficiently large power, so there is this n such that if you raise all the band twist to very high powers, then you get a right and Artin group. In other words, if you have a dentist, there is some obvious commuting relations between dentists. If you consider this cutting and rotating and gluing again along alpha, T alpha, and T beta. If they are disjoint, then T alpha will commute with T beta. Even if you consider any power. So this is one immediate commuting relations between band twists. So, and the theorem tells us that if you raise them to very high powers, then you will only remember commuting relations and you will forget any other complicated relations. So here, more precisely, the right Artin group, the defining graph of the right Artin group can be described as the coincidence graph of C, where coincidence graph means that if 2 curves are intersecting, so there is an edge. No, there is not an edge. So coincidence graph. Incidence graph is if 2 curves are intersect, then there is an edge, and coincidence graph is complement graph of them. So if 2 curves are intersecting, there is not an edge. And if 2 curves are disjoint, there is an edge. Right. So, I mean, in the workshop, so many things are going on, so I've almost forgotten that my talk was today. Alright, so vertices of the gamma is just the curve set C, and whenever 2 curves are disjoint, we put an edge. So similarly setting results was also given by Funa in 2002. So he gave more quantitative version on that lower bound end of the right and Artin subgroup mapping class groups, and also Clay, Leininger, and Mangas. So this theorem or this philosophy is not completely unheard of in the previous results. Well, we'll get to it later. So the third way of, let me just summarize what is the content of theorem. You have pairwise, non-isotopic, in other words, independent, essential simple loops on closed surface. And now you're going to, surface actually, and you're going to raise them to sufficiently large power, where the power depends on the collection. Then that group will be Widen-Artin group, just like what we can expect. So if two curves are disjoint, they will intersect. They will not have any relations between them.
Does it really depend on the collection of loops, or is there an N that works for all collections?
Well, the version of theorem that I know is depends on collection. Yes.
Go ahead, Eddie. Sorry. If N were like infinite,
Right.
then this theorem sort of follows from you drill out loops in a surface times interval, and you want to kind of recover, when is this a product? Well, or when is the order relevant, not relevant, whatever. It's clear that the polymorphism type depends only on the order in which these things are going up to being able to slide them in this relation. So could you argue by sort of hyperbolic band surgery that for sufficiently big N, these things are different exactly under those equivalence relations, and therefore the elements of the group are different? I'm just wondering if that's geometric equivalence.
I see. Yeah, I didn't hear more of that, but I don't know what's the proof of this theorem.
I don't think that's how Thomas's portrays.
Okay. But Thomas proof was like
right?
Yeah. I see. So there are like 3 competing proofs for this theorem. And I'd like to hear more about it. Yeah. But I don't go into details of the proof. Yeah. So I was just using it. So let's see. So given a graph, now we're going to so basically the proof of the theorem that I would like to describe is very, very elementary. So given a graph, we are going to construct some Widen-Artin subgroups of that group. So what do we do? Well, first of all, find the closed surface and some collection of curves there, such that the Poisson's graph of those curves are precisely that gamma. So that's always easy. Right? So just consider a bunch of any graph, make a surface and basically you can consider some collection of circles and join them by bands if necessary. And take a radial label so that the Poisson's graph is precisely gamma. Now the previous any of those 3 theorems can tell us that if you raise the densest to highest power, sufficiently large powers, they will generate Widen-Artin group. Now what we're going to consider is vertex conjugates. In other words, consider any list of vertices, possibly redundant, and any list of words in the Widen-Artin group. And we're going to consider the commutation graph of vertex conjugates. So V to W means the vertex V conjugate by the word W. And consider commutation. Of course, redundancy is fine, but if you have, say, precisely 2 words in the Widen-Artin group, of course, we're going to just forget it. So commutation graph means that the vertices are the elements there, and if 2 words commute, we're going to put an edge. And the claim is that, so one base computation graph, say com graph, then the claim is that if you raise them to high power, sufficiently large powers, that will generate Widen-Artin. So this is more or less quite clear from the previous result. Because, so basically in words, high powers of vertex conjugates generate Widen-Artin group, and they will generate relations over, just like the twist. So I'll explain why that is true. And as I said, this kind of theorem is not completely unheard of. For example, graph shows that if you have torsion-free hyperbolic group, if you raise any set of elements to sufficiently large powers, they will generate free group. And actually, the famous Tits conjecture claims, and is proved recently, that if you have any Artin group, not necessarily Widen-Artin group, but any Artin group, and if you square the generators, they will generate Widen-Artin group. So it has been proved by this list of people, and completely proved by Chris Pence. So there is some, so it is not always true, but there's some philosophy that if you have a certain group and consider finite general subgroup, if you generate those, if you consider sufficiently large powers of those generators of the subgroup, is it a winding Artin or not? So to describe our theorem, so, well, more precisely to describe our theorem, we consider the extension graph or finite graph. So that will try to model this vertex conjugates. So given a graph, the extension graph is commutation graph of vertex conjugates. I will give a combinatorial description. Actually, it's infinite process though. Combinatorial description of this commutation graph later. So basically, the vertices of this gamma to E. Given a gamma, we define gamma E. Vertices are conjugates of vertices. So pick any vertex and pick any word in the right hand, right? Vertex conjugates. So if this is actually hugely locally infinite graph, and the theorem that we have described is that if you have a finite connected, anti-connected graph, then gamma extension graph embeds into curve complex. So, well, as I said, for some surface. So why is it true? So consider any graph gamma. Right? So consider any graph gamma. Now we're gonna perceive gamma as the coincidence graph of certain curves, alpha 1 through alpha n. Say where alpha 1 is essential simple closed curve on the surface. Now also, one can embed a gamma into the class group by the Thomas theorem. Say all those three theorems, so there is an embedding such that each vertex goes to then twist along certain curve corresponding to V. Now this vertex conjugate, will go to, what is it? So vertex conjugate is W inverse VW for vertex V and word W. This goes to, say, VW inverse, then twist along certain curve, VW. Therefore, this is then twist along VW, alpha V may be inverse. Right, W inverse. Therefore, if you raise them to high powers, so first of all, now this vertex conjugate corresponds to some simple closed curve. And the curve complex C is basically a curve where vertices are simple closed curve on the surface and there is an edge if two curves are disjoint. So there is a map from this vertex conjugate to simple closed curves. And the commuting relations will be precisely disjoint relations between those curves. So
I will conjugate by elements of the comma and not by elements of mapping puzzle.
Alright, because basically we want to so you can do that. I mean, this is basically subgraph of curve complex. So there are many ways of making subgraphs of curve complex. And because gamma E will be used, actually there will be a theorem here appearing. So gamma E will be used to embed winding Artin group into another winding Artin group. Of course, then you can do that. So there's an intermediate graph between gamma extension and curve complex. But yes.
What are the edges of this extension graph?
The edges is, so commutation graph by definition is that if there's an edge if two vertices commute. So each vertex is V to W, where V is a vertex, W is a word. And so then it's an element of winding Artin group, and if two elements are commuting, we're going to have an edge.
Sorry, what is that anti-connected?
Anti-connected, I should have defined it. So anti-connected means it's complementary is connected.
So V, this large V is actually this collection of curves, right? So
Right, you can proceed. Yeah, it is
a collection of curves, and
right.
just apply these W's to these curves, you get more curves. Okay, so
Right.
lots of curves and the committed
Right, precisely. Yeah. So this is the recipe for corresponding a vertex conjugate to certain another curve. And then this map V will map B to W to then twist over this new curve. So this is a recipe. So actually this distance and increase data means that it is full subgraph, induces a graph of curve complex. If there is an edge in the target, it must appear in the source also. And a connected infinite diameter, well, one interesting observation is if two vertices are far enough. So this gamma is given a gamma. Again, I'm going to describe combinatorial process, but given a gamma, we consider really huge local infinite graph, which is subgraph of curve complex. And if two vertices are far enough, then the star of some vertex in between completely separates V to W. So I suspect this might prove that gamma is delta hyperbolic, but yeah, I'm not getting it. There's actually some call this Manning's criterion that we feel about when actually called a quasi-isometric tree. So if two vertices, for given two vertices, if there is some separating property or vertex in between, it proves that the graph is quasi-isometric tree. But it's slightly weaker than that. So, right, coming back to this description, given a gamma, we perceive gamma is the set of simple closed curve on a closed surface. Now, by those three theorems, we got a linear Artin group into the mapping closed curve such that vertex goes to then twist. Now we're going to consider vertex conjugates that will correspond to then twist along these new curves.
So if I don't understand, so you proved that gamma is hyperbolic or?
No, I didn't prove it. But I suspect that gamma is quasi-isometric. It is possible that gamma is QI to tree because it's slightly weaker than QI to tree criterion by Jason. Okay, so
in the last statement, the DVW, that's in gamma E graph or?
Gamma E graph, yes. But, yes, gamma E graph. Yes, gamma E graph. Okay, so in this description, now vertex, this field will map vertex conjugate to then twist. Now we're going to raise this then twist to sufficiently large power. Then they will generate Wagner Artin group, and that will be precisely commuting relations of this vertex conjugate graph or gamma extension graph. Maybe vertex conjugate graph is easier to remember, but we just named it as the extension graph. So this shows that if you consider this huge local infinite graph and take very finite induced subgraph of it, then this will generate Wagner-Artin subgroup of given Wagner-Artin group. Basically, this immediately follows from those three theorems. So let's see an example. So one simple example was
Your statement is not
cumbersome. Right, I don't know. But I'll talk about some necessary condition too. Well, actually, yeah, I should probably mention this. So this is all originated from Mark's question on embeddings between Wagner-Artin groups if the target is complement graph of path on 6 vertices, and if the source is pentagon, is there embedding result that I don't know, for example. So primary is that if you consider the whole along the star of a vertex, there is an embedding between Wagner-Artin groups. So it is stronger than the previous classical result, double along the link of a vertex. Let's see an example. If you consider pentagon, consider the vertex T on the right, and consider the link of T. Those are A and D. And I don't remember why B was colored blue, but yeah. Just consider A, T, D. The link of T is A and D, so the star of T is ATD. Star of T is ATD. So you're going to consider double along the star of T. So you get these two pentagons adjacent to each other. So B prime, C prime. And the map will be roughly described as B to T, more precisely described as high powers. So each vertex is labeled by vertex conjugate to high powers. And the previous theorem asserts that if you consider vertex conjugates and some high powers, the map will be an embedding. So in other words, we embed this new graph, right-arting new graph into right-arting with pentagon, such that each vertex goes to the label. And they will generate right-arting group, and they will only remember commuting relations. And determining commuting relations are usually easy. So one observation, so actually this gives a combinatorial description. Actually, this is the only thing that happens in the infinite process of making gamma extension. Basically what we do is, given a graph, take a vertex, double along the star of it, take a vertex, double along the star of it, take a vertex, double along the star of it. This infinite process will give you that gamma extension graph. Precisely speaking, if you consider any finite subgraph of that gamma extension graph, that finite graph will appear in this subfinite process of this infinite, subfinite step of this infinite process. So one interesting observation here is that, so we have this picture, now we're going to do double along the lower right corner. You do it again, you get this another, so we're looking graph. What the observation is,
So in Thomas's result, the number of powers you used to take depended on the curves and how many there were.
That I don't remember.
Well, what I mean is you start off with a bunch of curves,
Yeah.
and then you start looking at the images of the curves under Dane twists in big powers of those curves.
Right.
Okay, so now you get more curves. And now you look at sort of the Artin group generated by those curves.
Right.
But you need to take bigger powers. You know, it's now no longer generated by the n-fold Dane twists.
Oh, you mean in the proof of my theory?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah, sure. So, yeah, I'm not using the same M. Right.
Okay.
But I'm changing. Right.
Okay.
Thanks, yeah. I'm changing, yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we're going to raise sufficiently large power. So this, that technicality forces us to consider always finite subgraph of the huge extension graph. And so you're right. So if you consider larger and larger subgraph of the extension graph, we'll have to consider larger and larger m's. So this m does not depend, m is not constant for a given m. M should change. This in the previous picture. Right. Precisely. And this graph, right, contains 7 cycles. So this is something that actually at least we didn't know. So right-arcing group on 7 cycle embeds into right-arcing group on 5 cycle. And by this construction, one can completely, one can show that there is an embedding result between right-arcing groups on cycles if and only if m is in that arithmetic progression, n plus k times n minus 4. And it turns out that it's
Even only you.
actually it's if and only.
Okay.
So my theorem proves that it's only,
Yeah, all right.
but
Yes.
with theorem B that I'm going to describe now, this will be if and only. So, partially answering Jason's question. So the sufficiency theorem is also true for necessary direction if the graph is triangle free, two-dimensional, right? On Markov, right? So in the triangle free case, we can completely answer the embeddings between right and articles. So how do we describe the necessary condition? Well, to describe it, we need the notion of clique graph. So given a graph, probably there is a better term from graph theorist. But given a graph, one can consider a clique graph where the vertices are cliques. And two cliques, in other words, two vertices in a clique graph is adjacent if and only if the union is a clique in the original graph. So we consider all the cliques. Clique means complete subgraph. So consider all the cliques, and we declare that two cliques are adjacent if and only if their union belongs to a larger clique in the original graph. So I'm going to describe.
So the union is contained in a clique? Or
Same thing.
it generates a clique?
Same thing, right? Because any subgraph of clique is clique, right? So if two cliques, so if you have, say, one clique and another clique, say, along this subclick, it is equivalent to saying that their union is a click. Their union. Alright. Their union in this is a click. That's good. Yeah, that's the right way of saying it. Yeah. You're right. So their union in this is a click. Then we say that we declare that there is match between those two clicks, those two vertices. Then theorem B asserts that if we have an embedding from writing rectangle 1 into another graph, then lambda embeds into first take extension graph and then click graph. So this is two-step process. So given graph, take an extension graph and take the click graph of that extension graph. So that is the necessary condition. And previously, the converse direction was true if K is removed.
Is what?
K is removed. So previously, the sufficiency was if lambda is in this subgraph of gamma extension without that Q later. So the theorem is not even only. Actually, this click graph is much larger graph than the graph itself. So, one can list several corollaries. First of all, one can completely describe Ryan Artin subgroup of AP4. And in terms of this, it's interesting exercise. So P4 is path on 4 vertices. Now one can show that any forest, they don't have to be connected. Any forest Ryan Artin group will embed into AP4. And that is actually, one can use our theorems to prove this, or one can use three-manifold theory to prove that. Because AP4 is also three-manifold group. And in some sense, in certain sense, P4 is unconceivable. That means that if AP4 appears as subgroup of Ryan Artin group, then P4 must graphically appear in gamma. And previously, Campbell's showed this result for C4. So C4 is also unconceivable. If AC4 appears in Ryan Artin group, C4 must graphically appear in gamma. And a triangle free case, basically in the triangle free case, there are not many clicks. That's the definition of triangle free. So in the triangle free case or forest case, theorem A was if and only if. So lambda equals to gamma, if and only if, and lambda is gamma extension. So for the remaining time, I'd like to briefly describe the proof of this theorem. So just to mention that basically our original motivation was decidability of embeddability between Ryan articles. So we found this theorem, but still that gamma extension is very huge graph for collinearity. So even if lambda appears somewhere there, we don't know where to look at. So it's still not answering the decidability question. So we do not know whether that embeddability between Ryan articles, that question is decidable.
It's really large, but is it kind of homogeneous? I mean, because you're just sort of looking at different conjugates of... It is basically right. So the original graph, it is transitive. Right. By the original graph gamma, right? Basically you do the doubling process again and again and again. But even in this case, in the case of like C5, I don't know how C5 extension looks like. And C7 was kind of, we were surprised to find C7 in the extension graph of C5, for example. So, we don't quite know some finite description of this extension graph. Well, as I said, it is infinite process of that doubling along the thoroughly. And sometimes that gives good intuition. For example, if, say, the original graph does not contain a long cycle or complement graph of long cycle, so one can show that extension graph will not contain a long cycle or complement graph of long cycle. And that is, again, another interesting combinatorial exercise, which is not completely trivial. Okay. So let's see. To describe, so we would like to prove theorem B for the remaining time, and I guess we have a lot of time remaining. So if you have a embedding between Ryan Artin groups, we're going to embed lambda into gamma extension and then click graph. So given a word in Ryan Artin group, there's a notion of pure factors. So let's restrict ourselves to cyclically reduced case. Then consider graph gamma
and consider this opposite graph or complement graph. Say opposite graph have several components, and we're gonna color the vertices by red, blue, not white, pink, purple, maybe. So we're gonna color the vertices by their components, connected components, and given any word, write the letters. Say word in writing multigroup, write the letters as red vertex, red, blue, purple, red, blue, blue, purple. Then the obvious process that you can do is you can collect with respect to their colors, because being non-adjacent in opposite graph means that they are adjacent. So any vertex here in P will commute with any vertex in B. So you just collect red vertices, blue vertices, purple vertices. And each word is called pure factor of W. We're going to just consider cyclically reduced case only for simplicity. So these are called pure factors. So in other words, each one is pure factor. So pure factor means that support this is a connected subgraph, gamma opposite. Because if there are no more components than one, then that process is just already done. So being non-pure factor means that it breaks. That star means topological join. So any vertex in support of W. Support means basically the letters appearing the word. So the topological join, in other words, any vertex in W1 is adjacent to any vertex in gamma. Right? Or the W1 and W2 are common powers, common root. W2 are powers of certain word. And essentially unique pure factor decomposition of every word, and the process is already described, collecting with respect to their colors. And pure factor, we're going to define commutation graph. We have already defined what the commutation graph is. And if you have a pure factor decomposition, then the commutation graph of those pure factors will be a clique. So that's obvious because we have connected with respect to their colors. So W1 comes to W2, W1 comes to W3, and so forth. Every commutation graph, every pure factor will commute with any other pure factor of a given word. So the key lemma, actually this is almost all. The key lemma is if you have pure factors in writing Artin groups. For full detail, we have to consider non-cyclically reduced case also, but let's just consider cyclically reduced case only. So consider cyclically reduced, actually pure factors, just pure factors. Then the commutation graph will appear in that curve complex, in that extension graph. So this is the key lemma. So again, recall, given a gamma, we do the doubling process forever to get gamma extension. And we're claiming that if we have certain pure factors in given Artin group, the commuting relations will be encoded somewhere in that extension graph. Commuting relations between pure factors. So why does it prove that we have B, or the necessary condition? Because now suppose say a lambda. Suppose a lambda embeds into a gamma. So let's say if it's the map, so each vertex.
In particular, if the complement consists of one component, right?
Yes.
Then you just take any collection of words.
A pure factor. Well, so pure factor means that is support. The small support is the smallest possible reduced subgraph that contains gamma W. So it doesn't matter whether gamma is connected or not, because even if gamma is connected, you're saying that.
No, if gamma opposite is connected.
So even if gamma opposite is connected, is in this subgraph might not be connected. So right. So there are pure factors, non-trivial pure factors. So we fix the map. We suppose there is an embedding between two Artin groups, and vertex will map to certain multiplication of pure factors. Right. So look at the pure factors. Right, did I use psi? Right. So given psi, consider pure factors in psi v. So there are several vertices, so say v1, 2, whatever multiplication of pure factors, and so forth. And we're going to consider all of those pure factors. Omega is the commutation graph of pure factors appearing in this picture. Then let's see. The picture is like, say, given lambda, and there's an omega. Each vertex goes to multiplication of some vertices. Multiplication of vertices of a clique in omega. Right? Because as we have noted in number 3. So each vertex is multiplicating pure factors where these pure factors will in this clique in the commutation graph. Therefore, one can define, it's easy. Computation tells us that one can define a map from lambda to clique graph omega. Corresponding, let's say K is name of this clique, then consider the vertex K in omega K. Consider any other vertex, say A. Any other vertex, consider another clique corresponding to in omega. There will be, let's say L is the name of the clique, and consider the vertex L in omega K. So in this way, one can define a map from lambda to omega K, the graph. So we have defined the graph map, and then it's purely combinatorial to determine whether it is really embedding, so that the target is, it is an induced subgraph in the target. So it's just combinatorial check, vector that. So, alright, and then by lemma, we know that omega K. So omega commutation graph pure factor is induced subgraph of gamma extension. Therefore, omega K will be subgraph of gamma extension K, gamma extension graph. Right? So the key part is showing that if you have collection of pure factors, that will be induced subgraph of the extension graph. And then the rest is really purely combinatorial. And actually this, we really enjoy this proof. So the key lemma is that, right, so if I was that, if I have embedding between Artin groups, that will appear in the clique graph of the extension graph. So why is it true? So given a set of pure factors, list of pure factors, consider their commutation graph, and we will show that omega will appear gamma extension. In other words, this is like a quiz. So if you have, say, pure factors W1, W2, W3, Wn, say pure factors in Artin group. Suppose they are all distinct. Then the question is, does there exist, say, vertex conjugate, and vertex conjugate mimicking the commutation relations between those pure factors? So let's see an example. For example, if you consider, say, gamma as A, B, C, D, and consider the pure factors, say W1 is AC, W2 is, say, BD. They are pure factors because they generate induced subgraph in the complement graph. Now the question is, so can you find, well, basically W1, W2 does not commute. W1, W2 does not commute. But if you blindly choose a vertex from W1 and vertex from W2, they might commute accidentally. If you choose A from the support of W1, B from support of W2, they might accidentally commute, just like in this case. Now the quiz is that what is the easiest way of complicating A? So A2, some complicated word, B2, some complicated word, so that they do not commute. Well, it is obvious in this example, but if you have now several pure factors, what you're going to do is just choose a vertex from here, vertex from here, vertex from there. And consider UI, complicated. Complicated, such that AI to the UI will precisely mimic the commuting relations between WIs. And that we use again mapping class theory or pseudo-Hausdorff theory. So I described this so far. So if you have so we are given pure factors in the Wright-Artin gamma, and first embed Wright-Artin group into mapping class group by raising or considering some powers of band twist with respect to some closed curve, alpha v. And we know that there is an embedding for large n. Now we're going to consider small regular neighborhood of those curves, along which we took band twist. So then we know that there's a recipe to generate pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphisms. So this is basically the process of finding UI. There might be a combinatorial way of doing that, but I guess this is really some easy way of finding those complicated UI. So I'll consider some closed surface, and each vertex goes to some simple closed curve, say alpha of v for each vertex v. Now given WI, pure vector, consider the support of WI, in other words the letters appearing in WI, and consider small regular neighborhood of those curves. Now each vertex goes to band twist along those curves, so one can combine those band twists to generate so-called pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphism on that subsurface which is neighborhood of those curves. Well, just recall pseudo-Hausdorff, so phi in the mapping class group is called pseudo-Hausdorff if and only if basically phi does not fix any orthopic class of simple closed curve. So there is a recipe of generating pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphism on a surface. So we're going to consider actually subsurface of it. So generate a pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphism on the subsurface, and that we're going to use to complicate the world. So pick any vertex in WI. So given WI, we're going to fix any vertex. In other words, any simple closed curve. And then the situation is we have various simple closed curves, various surfaces sigma I, sigma j corresponding to pure factors. There are basically n subsurfaces. And we're going to pick one simple closed curve, say alpha of vi, alpha of vj. This is schematic diagram. And we have pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphism acting on it. So we're going to choose, there is a recipe, say QI, which is in the Wright-Artin group, so that in the mapping class group, this acts as pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphism, QJ acts on the pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphism.
Because it should also from the subsurfaces, right?
Subsurface, yes, trivial outside. You can consider. So, well, first of all, the coincidence graph of those complicated curves will be precisely, so let's see. So we have the subsurface sigma I, sigma j, and we arbitrarily choose some essential curve there, essential curve there. They might not intersect, but if you apply the pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphism alpha v sufficiently many times, they will intersect. And even if you have n choices, n pure factors, they will remember the coincidence relations. In other words, the coincidence graph, let's see, so what is the coincidence graph of that? So if you apply the pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphism by many times for cosmetic reason, will be coincidence graph of the subsurfaces. So this is some easy, cheap way of achieving of mimicking that coincidence relations of surfaces by coincidence relations of closed curves. And moreover, number one, coincidence graph of this PQI to make again, you apply pseudo-Hausdorff homeomorphisms to the simple closed curve alpha V, alpha Vi. Well, so if you consider, say, band twist along phi qi. So what's the, well, let's see. What's the image of that complicated word, Vi2 qi to the n? So again, recall that this R-line Artin group is embedded into large mapping class group by the map phi. Then this image of phi is, of course, phi of qi negative n, phi of Vi, phi of qi to the n. So, and each vertex goes to band twist. Actually, some power. Some power. Probably different power, but we're going to raise them to very high powers anyway later. And this will be band twist with respect to some other curve. Okay. Of 2 nth power. Nth power. So in other words, to see whether Vi to Qi, this is vertex conjugate, where Qi is sufficiently complicated word chosen by Penner's work on recipe for pseudo-isomorphism, commuting relations between Vi to the Qi to the nth power is remembered by commuting relations or commuting relations of these band twists. And commuting relations of band twists is precisely coincidence relations between the curves along which it is rotating. So commutation graph of this guy is precisely number 1, coincidence relation of these guys. So we show that 1 equals to this commutation graph. And number 2, coincidence graph of sigma I is precisely same as commutation graph, commutation relations between pure factors. That is actually another somewhat non-trivial combinatorial group theory. So if you have pure factors, if 2 pure factors commute, and if they do not have common root, then if and only if it is completely joined. Topological join of those two support its subgraph of defining graph. In other words, any vertex here must commute any vertex there. That's the only possible way of commuting, having 2 commuting pure factors. So number 2 is number 2, number is number 1, and this vertex commutation graph is a graph gamma extension, and commutation graph of Wi is by definition omega. Therefore, we have just shown that everything, those 4 graphs are the same, so omega is induced graph of gamma extension. So basically, again, it's like a quiz. Probably there might be a better way of achieving this by combinatorial group theory, but we just use pseudo-isomorphism theory to make complicated enough word Qi, so that vertex conjugate or mimic the commuting relations of pure factor relation, pure factor words. Okay, so that completes the proof. So just for the sake of this, just in case fire, just accidentally forgiven. Alright, thank you very much.